Corey, do you think marriage is a man-made institution that is now outdated?
Well, it's definitely a man-made institution. Obviously, people that study the Bible would say, "No, this is God's commandments that you got to get married." And the reality is, in the old days, the institution itself was, guys would be traveling through a village. They'd hook up with some fair maidens and leave a bunch of pregnant fair maidens behind as they went on to the next village or whatever. And they end up having all these illegitimate kids. And the reality is, kids need a good mom and a good dad that helps them grow up, to teach them values and honor and codes and integrity and how to operate as a human, how to be successful, that kind of thing. And but when I look at the way the laws are now, they're so unfairly slanted in the woman's favor in most states that, I mean, getting the government involved in your relationship is just too much downside risk for the average guy. So you'd be much better off going to an attorney and he can draw up some kind of a prenuptial agreement, and then you guys can have some kind of a civil marriage or a civil ceremony where you don't involve the government in your relationship. A lot of guys, especially the last few years, I got a lot of guys that have done that. They've gone and gotten married with their church or whatever, and then they have, depending on the country they're from, they have some kind of a legal agreement drawn up that determines, what happens if the relationship doesn't work out, what happens if there's kids, what happens if there's a business, what happens if there's stock investments, what happens if they buy a house together, or what happens if they buy investment properties together, who gets what. And that's the kind of thing that you have to agree to up front. Just like if you go into business with somebody, you're going to draw up a partnership agreement. And that partnership agreement, lays out what you owe to the partnership, what your partners owe to the partnership, and the consequences of how to disengage if somebody is not holding up their end of the deal. And so you can come up with a legal framework that works in your city, your state, your country, that, because again, the way the marriage laws are, it's just so unfairly slanted against the guys that it's too much downside risk. It's just not a good deal for most dudes. So if you can get all that shit agreed to up front, you know, it would behoove you to do that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely outdated too. Not a lot of people are getting engaged anymore or married, unfortunately.
Well, statistically, if 50 to 60% of them are not working out, I mean, you think from a business perspective, is if you're starting a business and 50 to 60% of them are not going to work out, it's like that's really terrible odds. If you're investing in stocks and there's a 50, 60% chance you're going to lose all your investment, those are pretty terrible odds. So anything you go into, especially where there's a big financial exposure, it's you're trying to mitigate your risk as much as possible, and you want to make it as easy as possible to disengage if it doesn't work out. Because I mean, you just look at what's it, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. They split up like almost a decade ago, and the last asset they were fighting over was this winery that they owned, and I guess she sold her shares to some other individual, and so now Brad Pitt is forced to be in business with some guy that he didn't know. And so, like, what I've read about it is that was part of what they were arguing over. He was like, you can't sell your share of our winery to some guy and basically force me to go into business with somebody I didn't agree to go to business with. And she was like, yes, I can. And so that's part of what they were fighting it out. And, I think most of their kids are already adults now.
Yeah.
So who's going to take care of who's going to raise the kids? Like, that question is kind of moot because they've been in court for so many years fighting it out. And it's like the only people that benefited financially from them splitting up were the attorneys, on his attorneys and her attorneys. They got rich off of that. And they're still getting rich. They're still billing hours on it. And it's, if the two of them sat down and looked at all of their legal bills over the last decade and looked at how many millions of dollars they spent on the attorneys, I mean, that would probably be pretty sobering. You'd be like, that's a big percentage of your net worth potentially that you just fighting it out. All you did was make the attorneys rich.
Why did they split in the first place? Did he cheat on her or something?
Well, supposedly he had a drinking problem, and then where it blew up was they were on a private plane flight together, and he got angry and at one or several of the kids and yelled at them or spanked them or something. I don't know. It was like after that trip was when she filed for divorce,
Oh.
and so her claim was that he was a terrible father, and then so she had custody of the kids most of the time, and it kind of looks like the kids have all sided with the mother just because she spent most of the time around them. And then, so that's unfortunate for Brad because, he doesn't get to really have a relationship with his kids anymore. And that happens a lot. If the woman gets to spend most of the time with the children, oftentimes, especially if their divorce is not very amicable, the woman is going to turn the guy or the kids against the father to the point where the kids are like, I don't want anything to do with you. And I mean, it happens a lot. It's heartbreaking because a lot of guys, they want to be dads and they want to be apart, but the woman is so mad and so hurt and so upset about the breakup of their relationship, she seeks to punish the guy by preventing him from participating in the lives of the kids, yet he's expected to pay for all the bills, but have absolutely no say, and that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's why if you're going to get involved in something like that, it's just better, if you guys can't come to an agreement up front, involving attorneys when you're happy and you're in love and you want to do this, then you definitely shouldn't go through with a marriage because if you can't stand each other and you want to get divorced and then you got attorneys who it's in their financial interest to keep you hating each other and fighting so they can continue to fleece you and their bills, well, all you're going to do is make the divorce attorneys rich. You end up hating each other and it causes problems with your kids and then you fuck your kids up. And instead of raising great humans and co-parenting together, oftentimes the kids don't like one or both of the parents.
And that he wanted a more traditional life, and she wanted a more humanitarian.
Humanitarian.
Yeah, which means
She was a do-gooder.
She wanted to be a philanthropist.
Well,
So
plus,
she wanted,
some of their kids are adopted, right?
right.
And they're
So
different
she
races,
probably
so
wanted
she's
to go
probably
and get more
virtue
kids
signaling.
and
oh,
from other countries. Which, if you look at their legal battles, everything that they spent, they could have gone and probably adopted or bought another country. Like, all jokes aside,
Yeah, who really won in that case? The parents don't like each
not
other.
a third
Most
world
of the
country.
kids don't really like the dad now.
That's not true.
Well, that one of them just changed their name. Doesn't even want to have
Shiloh.
Brad Pitt's last name. I think it was Shiloh. She is estranged from her father, John Voight. She's got some daddy issues.
Well, that's where it stems from.
Yeah, so she passed that on to her kids, and now
But she
most of her
also
kids
has
don't
a
like
lot
her
of
dad.
issues, like
Yeah.
herself. She suffers from extreme anorexia and drug use and a lot of other things. So she's not an angel. Neither of them are.
Yeah, I don't really know, but like I said, it's just sad because it plays out in the public eye, and then you look at that and you go, all the money and the power and the beauty that the two of them have, it just ended up in a mudslinging contest.
You can have
It's still going on. Even though they settled, a month or two ago about the vineyard, there's still legal shit that they're battling it out with.
if it teaches you anything, you can have all the money in the world, but
If you marry the wrong chick and
Well,
you involve the government, it's going to be hell
it
to
has
get out of
nothing to
it.
do with the marriage.
Their relationship stemmed from cheating, anyways.
Exactly. They
Yeah, he
started
was-
off
He was
with
married to Jennifer Aniston.
Were they
They-
married or were
Yep.
they just
Yeah, they were
together?
married.
he cheated on Jen
Did she have a
in
boyfriend or
Mr.
somebody?
and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That's when
That's a good
him
movie, by the way.
and Angie started their affair, and he left Jen for Angie. It was infidelity, and even during his breakup with Angie, he tried to go back to Jen, and Jen was like, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. You hurt me too many times."
Well, I think also she couldn't have children.
She never wanted children. That was her thing.
Oh.
I don't think she wanted the kids. I don't know if it was because she couldn't, but that was a big thing.